Hello, we have a couple stories from the same person that were posted in PettyRevenge. They both deal with a dynamic between a couple and their neighbors who continually cause them trouble. The revenge leads to some very funny moments. As always, spelling and grammar mistakes courtesy of Reddit. Lol. Don't forget to like and subscribe. It helps this channel grow. Thank you. This story is titled, Do Not Hurt the Tomatoes. Once, many years ago, we innocently bought a house next door to a retired Marine couple. She was about 6 feet 2 inches and strongly resembled Arnold. It's not a tumor in his current state, and he was about 5 feet 7 inches and probably weighed 130 pounds. They were very yard proud and thoroughly obnoxious about it. After living next to them for a short time, for some unknown reason, they decided to mount a campaign of general obnoxiousness against us. It started small, a note on a friend's car that he was 3 inches over on their side when parked on the street in front of our house. Then it escalated, rapidly. They reported us to animal control for farm animals inside the city limit. We had 2 Shih Tzu. They were not used to pull a plow. They reported us to the health department for leaving our pool with a small amount of water in it and breeding mosquitoes. It was hydrochloric acid being used to wash the pool and prep it for repair as it was derelict when we moved in. They reported us for repairing our fence without a permit. Not moving it, not tearing it down or replacing it, we merely nailed some boards back up. They reported us for loud parties, unquiet parties and no parties. They called City Hall on us so often it became a joke amongst those hallowed halls. All the while they continued with the small harassments as well. We ignored all of this, just making sure we had an extra plate for whatever official they called out that day. But then, they committed the ultimate crime. We were breakfasting on the patio one lovely morning when I happened to look over and see a sprayer nozzle come through the fence slats. And they sprayed poison on my tomato and jalapeno plants. Now we love our salsa and I make an absolutely exquisite fresh salsa. And they dared spray poison on my tomato and jalapeno plants. Poison my tomatoes and peppers, will you? In Texas, that's a killing offense. Sadly, we did not live in Texas, so I was forced to devise my own punishment. One thing about their house is that it must have been built on an ant hill. They constantly fought ants. We regularly heard them complaining about ants as they tried to rid them from their backyard. Our homes were built on a golf course and being considered patio homes all had lovely large patios with huge kitchen windows with sliding glass opening onto a pass-through serving counter. So, I made a very, very large batch of simple syrup and froze it in ice cube trays. Friends and I would sit on our patio and toss ice cubes. We had a points system that ranged from getting the cubes on the patio, to getting them up against the base of the sliding door, to getting them onto the counter and up against the opening of the window. We gave them ants. Lots of ants. Not being particularly close neighbors, the Marines gave us no warning when they went on vacation. We did notice it got quieter and I didn't overhear any further discussion between them about the sticky mess that regularly showed up on their patio, but I didn't really think about it. Besides, I was behind on points. So, the bombardment continued. The ants celebrated. They sent out telegrams worldwide inviting all of their relatives to move. They had found paradise. The grass was green and there were regular supply drops. They invaded. There were tiny black ants, larger brown ants and big red ants. Hosannas were sung. They built neighborhoods of McMansions. Ant rockets did the can across the counter. They held parades. There were Friday night fiestas with live ant mariachi bands. It was beautimous. I went through 3 5-pound bags of sugar. We knew exactly when the Marines got home from their 6-week cruise. We could tell by the screeches of anguish. Apparently, the ants had made their way inside. There were screams from the kitchen, and the pantry, and the laundry room, and the bathroom. It was ear-shattering. Who knew a 5 feet 7 inches male could even make those sounds? Battle was enjoined. The army ants dug foxholes and built redoubts. The fire ants formed special forces teams and close protection units. The war raged for months. Despite regular resupply, the ants were decimated. The Marines were seen collapsed in patio chairs, hollow-eyed with exhaustion, their once pristine backyard closely resembling the aftermath of the Battle of Ypres. Peace talks were held. Détente was achieved. Calm reigned on Avenida Pancho Villa. Until the Marines got their second breath and reinforcements in the form of their son, the Marine Jr. Further shenanigans ensued, and yours truly discovered that raccoons are not only exceedingly dexterous, they are inordinately fond of overripe figs. But that's another tale. The saga continues. Now, where were we? Oh, yes, there. When we last left off, it was at the end of the Great Ant Wars and the Marines were beginning recovery. As happens, time passed and several months later they were back to their version of normal. The devastation wrought by the great ant wars on their backyard had been mainly eradicated and life on Avenida Pancho Villa was back to its natural orderly routine. When one morning the Tomato Avengers and rescue troop was gathered on my patio. This was a recurring assemblage of the core group, usually involving mimosas or margaritas, and we heard a large vehicle pull into the Marine's drive. Not being nosy, just curious, everyone ran over to take a peek. Except me. I ambled. It was a pickup truck. One of the very tall and very long ones. And out of it climbed the Marine Jr. In looks he was the perfect combination of his parents. In personality, well, he didn't have one. Unless arrogance counts as personality. I am genuinely surprised he didn't regularly trip and fall since he walked around with his nose so far in the air it was practically upside down. How he managed to avoid drowning when out in the rain remains a mystery. And, to be frank, if I may, he was a bit, shall we say, dim. In other words, he was a complete cockwomble. And he was not there just for a visit, he had somehow managed to get himself PCS'd to the local base and was moving in. This was not generally regarded as a good thing in the neighborhood, but he really wasn't our problem. I should explain that we lived in a small tract right at the edge of the city limits. It consisted of 4 streets, each about 3 blocks long. We lived on the first street, which had the only driving entrance, exit. Across from the entrance was a park with walking, bike trails and a river. Behind us was the golf course, separated by a 4-foot-tall chain-link fence with an access gate to the course. All of the other fencing in the tract was 6 inches privacy fencing, and on the other side of the tract opposite the golf course was the end of the city limits and a farm. The farmer mainly grew things, but he did keep several interesting animals in the field at the end of the street crossing the entrance into our tract. On a lovely morning a few weeks after the arrival of the Marine Jr., the Tarts and I were out for our daily perambulations. And Jess, all names have been changed for the protection of the completely innocent, noticed the farmer had added a miniature horse to his little animal collection. Now, Jess was the ultimate animal lover, but hadn't any experience with live animals other than cats. And she decided she had to pet the miniature horse. So, we make our way in that direction as she tries to convince him to come up to the fence. He didn't want to come up to the fence and obviously didn't find her entreaties persuasive. Thus, she decided to go to him. Jess is an utterly delightful human being and a joy to be around, but she was not dressed for the occasion. On this morning she was wearing a kind of big, flowery top, tight white jeans. As she herself has said in similar phrasing, I have to wear jeans that look like they were painted on. It's the only thing that keeps my double wide ass from jiggling so much I just spin in circles, and 4 inches high-heeled lipstick red sandals that brought her up to about 6 feet tall. This was her usual attire for going for a walk, or pretty much anywhere, I should add. Needless to say, her attempt to scale the fence did not go well. But then someone, who should have known better, and I don't want to talk about it, pointed out there was no lock on the gate. And through it she went. This field consisted of some grass, lots of mud, huge mud holes, and more mud, so she carefully picked her way over to the miniature horse and reached out to pet him. He bit her. She shrieked and began to run back to the gate. Also, in the field was a donkey or two llamas, and a goat. Evidently the goat had taken the mini horse under his wing and it began to chase her. It was faster than she was and caught up with her about halfway to the gate. Whereupon it butted her into a mud hole. A large mud hole. The largest mud hole I had ever seen anyone butted into by a goat. She went in face first. Now I have heard that a mud bath is good for your skin, but I don't think they were talking about this. The rest of us ran to her rescue, and while a couple of us diverted the goat, who seemed intent on repeating the exercise, the others helped Jess up, breaking the heel off one sandal in the process. But we were in a bit of a hurry. And then we all ran, limped for the gate. We got ourselves outside of the field, closed the gate, and took stock. And realized we still had a minor problem. The 5 of us were on one side of the fence. Covered in mud, one with a broken heel on her shoe and one missing a shoe entirely. This was the good part, as we were on the right side of the fence. But the 2 llamas that had joined us were not. And on the other side of the fence, right at the gate, was a cranky miniature horse, 2 donkeys, and an angry goat. Reopening the gate to try to herd the llamas in didn't really seem like the thing to do. While we were debating the issue, the llamas decided to go for a walk and explore this new territory. Since we didn't want them to end up on the 4-lane at the end of the street, we chased after them and eventually managed to get round them and sort of aim them up into our neighborhood. We actually meant to head them back to the field, but they were not interested in that. They weren't especially appreciative of our efforts at herding either, but did at least end up moving in the right direction. If you recall, this is the street Jess and I lived on. I was on the golf course side, next door to the Marines, and she was directly across from them. As the llamas sauntered down the street, tasting a few enticing plants en route, we decided to just put them in the backyard and call the farmer to tell him they had gone for a ramble. Needless to say, as llama herders we were abysmal failures and they mostly went where they wanted, showing no gratitude at all for our efforts. But I ran around them and opened the nearest gate and the others eventually shooed them into the backyard. Then we collapsed in relief and went to hose ourselves down before trying to get inside to actually clean up. We were in the back with the hose when Beloved became aware of the commotion and poked his head out the door to say hi. Of course, we all froze when we heard him coming, but he didn't really notice until mid-sentence, whereupon he paused, gave a couple of slow blinks, and said, "That's clay. Don't let it wash into the pool, it's bad for it." We won't, and he took his refilled coffee cup back into his office to hide some more. What does all that have to do with the Marine Jr., you ask? Well, I'm getting there. We managed to get ourselves cleaned up and met again on our patio to, after suitable refreshments were served, attempt to find the phone number for the farmer so we could notify him his wandering llamas needed a ride home. Just then we heard the Marine Jr.'s truck. What he was doing home in the middle of a Wednesday afternoon was anyone's guess. The Marines were never home on Wednesdays. Never. On hearing his truck, we kind of peeked around the corner of the house and spotted him going inside. He was wearing a uniform. A real uniform. The kind that looks like a suit, not camis, BDUs. Janny suggested that he was probably just home to change outfits and might just do that and leave again right away without noticing, and we all hoped she was correct. She was not correct. As a matter of fact, our chorus of agreement was cut off by the sound of the sliding door into their backyard opening. Then we heard some Marine language. And a crash. And maybe a bang. And some more pungent, louder Marine language. So we all ran over and climbed up on some blocks at the edge of the fence to be able to see what was happening. Llamas are very cute animals and you might think they are very pettable, but in reality they are generally bad-tempered beasties who kick, and bite, and spit. For those interested, llama spit is thick, gluey, greenish and smells like grass or hay or some such thing. The loud Marine language disturbed Beloved and he meandered out and looked over the fence just as the llamas backed the Marine Jr. into a corner. The Marine Jr. had not fared well thus far in the encounter. His nice spiffy uniform shirt was torn in kind of a bite shape and had several large greenish spotches and he was limping. Beloved, llamas. What was he thinking? That yard is much too small for llamas. They aren't even legal inside the city limits. About then he looked at me, and I gave him the anime eyes, making him retreat again to his office muttering his mantra under his breath. His mantra being, "I don't want to know, it will look better when I pay the bail if I can genuinely say I had no prior knowledge." I did make his favorite chicken enchiladas for dinner that night. This is when the Marine Jr. looked up and saw all 5 of our faces hanging over the fence as we watched and decided, for some entirely unfathomable reason, it was my fault. When really had he just stayed at work like he was supposed to, the llamas would have caught a ride back to their field and no one else would have been aware of their visit. And the Marines and the Marine Jr. began another campaign of irritating behavior. Which is why I decided I was happy we had a fig tree. To be continued. Note from I just read it. At this moment, I don't see a continuation story, so I will post it as soon as I see it. I will also link the original stories in the description so you can follow it too. Thank you so very much for listening. Please check out my other videos and like and subscribe.